And that was the time that dear old Dad was in the best movie ever, Super Mario. Hey, what? You're filming? You guys promised.
Good evening, fanboys, or good morning, or good afternoon, whichever it may be. My name is still Jared.
And I am still Brendan, I guarantee it.
And today we are coming at you guys with an action figure review from Hasbro's new Amazing Spiderman line based on the upcoming film
Reptile Blast Lizard.
Yes, I hope he's not blasting fellow reptiles because that would be sort of perverse, don't you think?
It would be slightly.
Yeah, it would be kind of weird.
But I do hear that there's an outrageous alligator population in the sewers of New York, so maybe it would be for the benefit of the city.
I'm pretty sure that's fact.
I'm
pretty sure that's fact. Look it up.
I heard it on the TV.
It's on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, you know. What about this figure, Brandon? You want to have anything you'd like to mention specifically that sticks out to you?
Well, I want to go on record and say that I am a big fan of the Lizard character. From a pretty young age, when I was a child, I had a videotape of the 80s Spider-Man episode, Lizards Everywhere. And since then, I have absolutely loved the Lizard, and I've been waiting for him to appear in a film. And I wasn't 100% thrilled with the design when I first saw it, but it's grown on me quite a bit. This is the first action figure that's been available, and it's pretty good.
Alright, and we are about to tell you just how pretty good the Lizard is, so stick with us.
And we mean pretty good.
Maybe not pretty,
well,
but definitely...
It's ugly good.
Yeah.
The last vial of ooze! He must have drank all of it!
Alright guys, so this is a closer look at the Lizard action figure from Hasbro's line. As you can see, he is very accurate to the pictures we've seen of the film's design. Unlike Spider-Man, it seems like the painters have taken extra time and extra caution to make sure that it was just as movie accurate as it could be. Don't expect any sort of re-release that has more movie accuracy. I would say that this is it. So let's talk about the sculpt in more detail. As we can see, the Lizard has a great head sculpt. It's very accurate to the film. And, of course, it matches the appearance that we've seen from all the pictures and everything like that. It's a much more human kind of lizard face without the snout that we're all so accustomed to. I think that's a real shame for the film, but, you know, hey, this design is growing on us quite a bit. And, of course, the chest is very well sculpted. We have all this excellent kind of muscle definition with all these sort of ridges that make him very reptilian.
Unnatural-looking muscle.
And, of course, we have these great scales that actually feel really neat when you run your fingers across them. The tail on the back is a separate segmented piece. As we can see, there's a lot of great sculpting there, and it does curve up. And on the back, we have lots of great muscle definition. So, Brandon, talk about the paint.
Okay. The paint is very good, as Jared mentioned. It's quite accurate to the film. Unlike Spider-Man, they chose the right shade of green, or at least right so far as we can tell from what we've seen the movie. There's a really excellent effect on the front where there's more of a flesh tone or a sort of a yellow on his chest, and it just bleeds in really well from the darker green. There's all sorts of lead in here at the shoulders and on the sides, and it's just it's a really great effect. They really must have spent a lot of time doing this at the factory. The head is painted pretty well. If you look at a lot of samples, you'll notice varying degrees of teeth. Some of them are very toothy, some of them are fairly minimal. This one is one of the more minimal samples that we found. And the eyes are sunk in, but they're painted quite well too.
Brandon, the first thing I want to talk about that I feel like is a major detractor for this figure is the amount of articulation available.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, we have some pretty good articulation going here. For one thing, we have up and down here at the shoulder. It goes in and out on a hinge. The elbow is the same way, up and down and around. And there's no waist cut or any kind of ab articulation or crunch. The head has a pretty good range of motion. This is all the way up. This is all the way down. So that's pretty effective. Of course, though, here's the killer. T-crotch articulation at the hips, which is just very outdated and very unpleasant to see on any kind of modern figure. Of course, here's a bend at the knee, and of course it swivels. At the tail and the back, there is a cut that allows it to swivel around, and that does it for articulation. For a character as physically dynamic as a Lizard, someone who kind of pounces around and has a very savage way of fighting, at least from what I have seen of the trailers, but of course from the comics we know, he really should be able to strike a whole lot more poses than, say, this, you know. Of course, the Lizard, you know, if you're creative, you can get some great poses. There really should have been a ball joint here on the hip, and, you know, there should have been some hinges, something that would have allowed us to have chosen how deeply we pose them. Also, the knees seem to be permanently bent in this position, which maybe isn't too good if you're trying to get the lizard to stand straight up, but of
Yeah.
course we're not exactly sure of his stance in the film all the time. You know, it would have been great to have seen an ankle hinge right here. There's just several points of articulation that I feel are missing that would have served this figure better.
If the basic movie Spider-Man is ultra posable Spider-Man, the lizard must be acceptably posable lizard, you know. The other detractor for the figure is the scale. He's just not very tall, and the lizard's got to be a large and imposing villain. As you can see, he's actually a good deal shorter than the basic 3 3/4 Spider-Man. Now, the knees are bent a little bit, and then the ankles fold in this way. So, you know, you can imagine if he were standing straight up, he'd be a little bit taller, but still, and you know, they don't look that great together. He looks fine on his own, but with Spider-Man, it's just a no-go, unfortunately.
And there we have it, guys. That was our closer look at the lizard. Overall,
Okay. Reptile Blast Lizard. Or is it Reptile Blast the Lizard? No, it's
or is it Reptile Blast Marvel's the Lizard? As we see on
Marvel's
some of these
Reptile
figures.
Blast, Marvel's the Lizard.
Is it Marvel's Reptile, Marvel's Blast,
From
Marvel's Lizard?
Marvel's the Amazing Marvel Spider-Man.
Yes, but I would say the Lizard. If you're in it for the articulation, if you're in it for things like that, he's definitely a 2.5 out of 5-star figure.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can always overlook one shortcoming out of a figure. Had the Lizard been underscaled, then that would have been the only problem.
Yeah.
3 stars. Had he had little articulation, that was the only problem. Maybe 3 or 3.5, because you know I'm not such an articulation Nazi.
Yeah. Especially for a villain, you know.
Right. And you know, Hasbro unfortunately has gotten this adjusted to a lower standard of articulation on their 3 3/4 figures. That's for both G.I. Joe and their Marvel figures, and especially in the movie lines.
So he's a good representation from the images we've seen. So he's, you know, it's a quality sculpt, and the articulation's acceptable. I think for me the real problem though is that he's so underscaled. You know, he's shorter than Spider-Man,
Yes.
which is just
Like I said, you know, easily 3.5 had it not been for scale problems. So again, for me, because of the double whammy of scale issues and limited articulation, I've got to say only 2.5. I mean, it has a great sculpt and great paint work, but those 2 issues really hold it back for me.
Yeah. I would say, from my perspective, I'm very disappointed by those 2 aspects, but I think the sculpt is really strong. So I would say 3 out of 5. He gets a pass from me. Pretty good.
Alright guys, so we appreciate you all tuning in. For more Amazing Spider-Man video reviews and any other figure you can think of, from NECA to Mattel to Mini-Mates to anything, just stick with us. We got customs and everything else coming down the pipeline.
Everything under the toy sun.
Subscribe. We're not a boring channel. You got a lot of different stuff with us.
Absolutely. Until next time, this has been Brandon.
This has been Jared. Thanks guys.
Daddy, is that you? Oh, God, I've been searching so long. Are you recording again?